It really just shows you sort of that there's an Epstein class, that there's a class of people who have wealth and privilege who want to protect one another from outside forces. So let's talk about the specific email. Epstein had a friend by the name of Kathy Rumler. Rumler was White House counsel under Barack Obama. She then went to a corporate law firm called Latham and Watkins, and she was at the Justice Department before Obama, after she goes into corporate defense law, and then becomes the lead lawyer for Goldman Sachs. So this is someone who's going through the revolving door, right? And the files show a massive amount of contacts with Epstein. She's getting gifts from him. She's bantering with him. She's even helping him in some of his legal troubles. But this email is something different. It's from 2015. It's a year after Rumler left the Obama administration. And she's just sort of kibitzing with Epstein. And in the course of that, she says, I'm developing a PR strategy for Mary Jo White against Elizabeth Warren. And Epstein says, good, Mary Jo White is good. And Rumler says, yes, and Elizabeth Warren is one of the worst. So what does that mean? And what does that mean in context? Who is Mary Jo White? Well, at the time, Mary Jo White was the chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is the enforcement agency that protects investors against financial misdeeds and things of that nature. At that time, when this email was sent, 3 days before it was sent, Elizabeth Warren, who was a senator at that time, sent a letter to Mary Jo White telling her that she is, I mean, it sounds like she's telling her she's the worst Securities and Exchange Commissioner in the history of the Securities and Exchange Commission, because she's constantly letting companies get off the hook without even having to admit wrongdoing, doing a bunch of sweetheart settlements. Mary Jo White's husband defends banks and corporate clients, and every time he gets involved in a case that is related to the SEC, Mary Jo White has to recuse herself. And the way that the SEC works, it's a 5-member panel. So if she recuses, there's an even amount of Democrats and Republicans. And usually that deadlocks. And so every time Mary Jo White's husband gets on a case, that company almost by design gets out of jail free, right? They get off without any kind of enforcement. So Warren puts together this bill of particulars. A 13-page letter, all of the things Mary Jo White is doing wrong. And 3 days later, Rumler writes to Jeffrey Epstein, I'm helping Mary Jo White with her to defend herself. And she's an outside corporate lawyer who is helping someone in the government involved in oversight by Congress. So, I mean, there are a lot of implications here. But Mary Jo White, yeah, go ahead.
No, just also like adding the fact that she was inside the government beforehand, before that position, right. Seems, so she has this insider knowledge as well. So that's even just like an added layer to me.
And then I'll add a few more layers, because these are the things you have to know about Mary Jo White. Mary Jo White pretty much invented the concept of elite impunity for corporate crime. In the 1990s, she took this thing called the Deferred Prosecution Agreement, which was really at that time only used for juvenile delinquents. It was said like, okay, we'll rehabilitate kids who didn't know what they were doing because their brains weren't developed. And we won't prosecute them right now, but we'll monitor them, and then we'll let them off more leniently in the future. She applied that to corporations. In 1994, when she was at the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Then she went into corporate practice and defended companies. Then she became the SEC chair and helped companies get off the hook there. And then went back into corporate practice. And among the people that she started representing at that time was Les Wexner, who
Mm,
was the source of a lot of Epstein's fortune and
right.
was just recently this week deposed by the House Oversight Committee. And
Yep.
she also defended and was the personal lawyer for the Sackler family, which was the
Oh,
family
America's Sweethearts.
America's sweethearts with the opioid crisis. They were
Yeah.
the heads of Purdue Pharma, the makers of OxyContin.
Hmm.
So Mary Jo White really sits at the center of this crisis in America of the fact that if you have wealth and power, you do not get called out or held accountable for your crimes. And here's Kathy Rumler and Jeffrey Epstein talking about how great she is and how she needs to be defended against Elizabeth Warren, who's criticizing her for, yes, elite impunity. And so
Wow.
it really just shows you sort of that there's an Epstein class, that there's a
Right.
class of people who have wealth and privilege who want to protect one another from outside forces and who want to protect wrongdoers from crimes, whether they're sexual crimes or whether they're
Hmm.
financial crimes. And so to
Right.
me, I could write so much about this one email
Yeah.
because it just sums up everything about the last 25 years of public policy and the fact that this era of no accountability has been really defining and led to where we are today.
And apparently, the elite corporations and the elite class also are lacking a fully developed brain if they're
Yeah,
using
apparently.
that same rule. No, that's
Yeah.
such a good point because I think obviously this is such a huge story in mainstream media as well, but and rightfully so. We're hearing so much about the atrocities that Jeffrey
Hmm.
Epstein and company committed and allegedly committed. But
Hmm.
I think something that definitely some members of Congress and some media are, getting, trying to cut through is this kind of network and tangled web of favoritism and helping each other out if you're in the club or not. But we're hearing so much about kind of just the sexual abuse, the intrigue, the mystery. So what do you think? I guess, yeah, in your words, what is missing from the mainstream media narrative when it comes to Epstein? And what would you have, maybe if people are saying, okay, I want to explore independent media a little bit more, what do you think
Right.
they could find as an alternative sort of
Well,
information?
I think this is really about a protected class, and this is
Yeah.
about the divides in our country falling not around necessarily even ideology or political party, but really around class. That it's the haves versus the have-nots. I talked to Rokana about this topic, and he said that his work on the Epstein files has really kind of changed his politics and how he
Mm.
stresses things when he talks about them. He believes that in order for the public to get buy-in on progressive policies, they really have to lead with accountability first. Because the belief is that, if you don't lead with this, then yeah, you can promise the world, but it's ultimately going to be corrupted and we're not going to get, benefits for the people. Somehow it will be co-opted in some way by
Yeah.
the elites. And so you need to lead and show that actually I'm willing to go after the elites and hold them responsible for actions taken that are wrong. And only then will you earn the trust of the
Yep.
public to then initiate a more activist kind of government. And so I think it's absolutely crucial that transparency is one thing. The fact that we have the files,
Hmm.
that's good. And we're seeing in other countries that this has led to
Yeah.
some accountability. Prince Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, for example, being arrested. But transparency is really, it's almost like a neoliberal kind of accountability. You're like hoping the market disciplines these people.
Yeah.
What we need to see is actual accountability. And
Yes.
if crimes are committed, they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And so, I think Representative Khanna kind of understands that. And ultimately, this has been a problem for a long time, whether you're talking about torture or leading us into war in Iraq or the financial crisis and all of the fraud that created this collapse in the housing bubble. You could talk about sex abuse in the Catholic Church. I mean, there have been this series of scandals that have shown elites to be at best negligent and at worst criminally responsible. And they keep getting away with it over and over again. And I think there's this rot at sort of the heart of our democracy, which is about a two-tiered system of justice. And the Epstein case really is about that. It's all about that. And to the extent that we finally turn a corner and hold the people who committed these crimes responsible, I think it means that we can sort of restore the trust of the public in government to be a force looking out for the ordinary person and the rule of law.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more about the transparency point. That's such a good point, that transparency itself is a very neoliberal idea. I thought right away about the recent, I think it was in the New York Times, this focus group talking about, Democratic voters would actually like somebody progressive because they see sort of more moderates or Democrats as of right now. I think one person said like no balls, no cojones, no accountability. And so I think actual real accountability is so important to get people back on board thinking, right, we're not just living in the haves and have-nots, right?
Why would anyone agree, yes, Medicare for all is the way to go if they think that all that money coming from the government is just going to be funneled into 100%. Healthcare corporations and things like that? You have to show that you're willing to do right by these not just these policies, but when wrongdoing happens, you're willing to prosecute no matter who is responsible, no matter what kind of wealth they have, no matter what kind of connections they have. So I think that's the important thing, sort of underlying the entire Epstein file situation.
For sure. And just moving forward, is there anything you're specifically looking out for that you from your lens specifically, are you keeping an eye out, and maybe is that a certain type of accountability? And can you share a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things we're doing a lot of at the prospect now that we've come into primary election season is looking at the role of money in politics. So we've seen a number of big money super PACs come into races in Illinois, in Texas, in North Carolina. And we're seeing kind of some fascinating changes in that landscape. Some super PACs, rather than progressive sort of unilaterally disarming and saying, no, we shouldn't have any money in politics, as long as APAC and crypto and artificial intelligence, as long as that money is being mounted, some progressives see the need for a pushback. And so we reported today that there's a new PAC called American Priorities that is going toe to toe with APAC in key races and is going to spend millions and millions of dollars to try to uplift candidates that don't toe the line on unconditional support for the Israeli government. So I think that those fights, which have characterized the 2022 and 2024 election cycles, particularly in Democratic primaries, whether there's a primary challenge to an incumbent or an open seat race, who those candidates are that win those safe seats, those blue seats, ultimately determine sort of the direction of the party in many ways. And so they're important fights to track and cover, and that's what we're doing at the prospect.
Yeah, and it leads me to one more question for you before I let you go. And once again, thanks so much for your time. I think some, as established party politicians will, do their focus groups and get their sort of approved sort of messaging. I think we're seeing from some of that sort of class this idea of like, oh, outsiders are good, and like, let me go against the grain, and I am actually
Mm-hmm.
anti-establishment. So what do
Mm-hmm.
you think is a good, I mean, I think you've already touched on it with the money in politics, but what is a good indicator of someone who's maybe just saying that and that sounds good, as to somebody
Right.
who's like, oh, I'm actually, this person's for real?
I think Democratic politics oddly discounts the notion of authenticity, of
Mm.
actually believing in something.
Mm.
And sometimes you can feel that when somebody is talking to you. You can only act so much like you believe something.
Right.
And also it's about the what you're taking up, what issues you decide are matter to you enough to make them in the foreground of your campaign or your political project. And I think that is a really underrated factor. Too much of Democratic politics is poll driven, trying to find where the middle point of the voting spectrum is and appeal to the widest variety of people. And it comes off as inauthentic, it comes off as fake.
Mm.
And so actually believing in something, even if some people are going to disagree with you about that, you look at someone like Bernie Sanders. It's very clear he believes
Right.
what he says, right?
Right.
And that's why people are supportive of him and interested in him. Is even if they don't totally agree with him on every issue, they're like, he's fighting for something, he believes in something,
Hmm.
and he's an authentic person. And so I think to me, Democratic politics needs to have more beliefs rather than
Yeah.
twisting with the wind of what direction the polls are blowing that day.
Couldn't agree more. David, thank you so much for joining. If people don't already know, where can they find your work, and where can they find more about the American Prospect?
Sure. We're at prospect.org. That's prospect.org. And we are reporting there every day. We also have a magazine, an actual hard copy magazine that we
Oh,
put out
wow.
6 times a year. And you can subscribe to it there at prospect.org. We're totally, mostly reader supported. And everything we do in terms of every everything we raise in terms of money really goes back into the magazine and the website. So prospect.org, and you can find out how to support us there.